You are the master of your fate. Let's begin. When heaven goes quiet, the enemy starts talking louder. Let me ask you something personal, and I want you to answer honestly, not politely. Have you ever prayed and heard nothing? Ever cried out desperate, tired, hanging on by a thread and felt like God didn't pick up? You waited for a sign. You begged for clarity. You gave it everything you had. And the only thing you got in return was silence. That silence can break a man's back if he doesn't understand what it really is. Because here's what most people assume: God must be done with me. Maybe I missed it. Maybe he's left me behind. I've seen it too many times. A good heart, faithful effort, real belief, slowly crumbling under the weight of one lie. That silence equals abandonment. But let me tell you what I've learned, not from theory, but from pain, from patience, and from watching how the divine actually operates. God does not abandon, he assembles. And if you're in a season where everything feels quiet, no answers, no breakthroughs, no sign that your effort is doing anything, I need you to listen to me. You are not being ignored. You are being built, but you can't see the construction because you're standing in the dust of it. It's hard to recognize God's hand when it's working behind the curtain. It's hard to feel close to heaven when your timeline feels like it's unraveling. But silence doesn't mean distance. Sometimes silence means something sacred is being positioned, and you're not meant to see it yet. You're meant to trust it. And that's the test. Because when heaven goes quiet, the enemy gets loud. Doubt gets loud. Fear gets loud. Impatience, insecurity, despair. They all start whispering. You're forgotten. You're failing. You were never enough. But listen to me. If God were truly done with you, you wouldn't still be here. You wouldn't still be hearing this. You wouldn't still feel the quiet ache that, somehow, you're made for more than this moment. That ache is proof that you're not done. It's proof that something is still alive under the silence. It's proof that this is not the end. It's just the part of the story where heaven turns the page. So no, the silence isn't the rejection you feared. It's the setup you couldn't see. And in this message, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that silence really means, and why it might be the clearest sign that something sacred is being assembled for your life. Next, let's expose the deeper lie, the one you picked up in the quiet and never questioned. You weren't just waiting for an answer, you were absorbing an assumption. Let's talk about what really happens in spiritual silence, because it's not just the absence of noise that hurts. It's the presence of interpretation. You asked for a breakthrough. You asked for guidance. You asked for peace or clarity or just some kind of sign. And what you got back was nothing. No shift, no confirmation, no move. So your mind did what it's trained to do. It filled in the blanks, and without a clear response from above, it started writing its own conclusions. Maybe God isn't listening. Maybe I messed something up. Maybe I waited too long or moved too fast. Maybe he's helping everybody else and skipping me. That right there, that's the lie you picked up in the quiet. That silence equals rejection. That delay equals disapproval. But let me tell you something I've come to know through experience and through walking beside others who have carried that same ache. Silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's alignment in progress. Sometimes the silence is not God turning his back. It's God turning the page. It's not a no. It's a not yet. Because what's coming requires more than you can see right now. But if you don't know that, if you were never taught how heaven builds, then you'll start assigning meaning to the silence that was never meant to be there. You'll start walking around with a broken sense of value, not because God removed you, but because you removed yourself from belief. And here's the most dangerous part. Once that lie gets in your spirit, the lie that silence means you're disqualified, you stop showing up with expectancy. You stop preparing. You stop praying with boldness. You start lowering your standard, backing away from your mission, apologizing for wanting more. You make your life smaller, not because it has to be, but because you assume the quiet meant quit. And that's how the enemy wins, not by destroying you, but by convincing you to stand still. But I'm here to tell you, you didn't mess it up. You didn't miss it. You didn't lose your shot. You just misread the silence. And once you understand what it really means, once you stop taking the quiet personally, you'll start seeing it as sacred, because it is. Next, I'll show you how the divine actually works, not in noise, but in hiddenness. The most important things in your life are built before you ever see them. Let me tell you something most people never understand until they've already lived through it. God does his best work in secret. He doesn't build greatness on a stage. He builds it behind scaffolding. He doesn't reveal destiny at the first prayer. He forms it slowly, quietly, and sometimes painfully, In the dark. Think about it. Where does the seed grow? Underground. Where is the foundation of a house laid? Below the surface. Where are diamonds formed? Under pressure, in silence, in places no one sees. That's not accidental. That's divine pattern. Heaven builds in hiding. And if you're in a season right now where everything feels quiet, no clarity, no movement, no confirmation, you are likely in the part of the process where the roots are going deeper. Because God never rushes what he plans to last. Let me say that again for someone who needs to hear it. God never rushes what he plans to last. If it's fast, it's probably fragile. But if it's hidden, heavy, and hard, there's a good chance it's holy. And I know how painful it can be to watch other people bloom while you feel buried. You see their breakthroughs, their wins, their answered prayers, and you wonder why you're still in the soil. But here's the thing. They may be in their harvest, but you're in your formation. And formation always comes first. It comes before the spotlight, before the blessing, before the doors swing open, and the moment feels ready. Because God doesn't send what you're not equipped to hold. He doesn't elevate what you haven't yet built the character to sustain. He doesn't rush greatness, he refines it. That silence you're in, that space where nothing seems to be happening, that's not punishment. That's preparation. That's God setting the stage. That's alignment clicking into place in ways you can't yet perceive. And if you keep trusting what's happening underground, if you keep watering your faith even when you can't see the fruit, you will rise. And when you do, it will not be shaky or short-lived. It will be strong, because heaven builds in hiding. But when it reveals what it's been working on, it makes sure the world takes notice. Next, let me show you why it had to be hidden, and why if you could see the blueprint, you'd stop panicking. You think you're being ignored, but you're being intricately positioned. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me during my own seasons of silence. God isn't winging your life. He's building it with precision. The confusion you feel right now, the delay, the disappointment, the moments where you can't see how any of it adds up. That's not chaos. That's construction. You just haven't seen the blueprint. And the blueprint changes everything. Because if you could see the timing he's working with, the connections he's aligning, the strength he's preparing in you, the doors he's holding shut until you're truly ready, you wouldn't be in panic. You'd be in awe. Let me ask you something. What if that closed door last year saved you from something that would have crushed your momentum? What if that unanswered prayer was God saying, "Not yet. You're going to need more strength for what I'm giving you"? What if the thing you call delay is actually divine orchestration? I've seen it play out too many times to call it coincidence. People think they missed their moment, only to find out their true moment hadn't even been built yet. They think the door shut for good, only to realize they were being rerouted to something 10 times greater, with roots instead of hype. But here's the challenge. You don't get to see the blueprint while you're standing in the middle of the mess. You don't get the full picture until you've trusted enough to keep walking without it. That's faith. Faith isn't just believing when you feel goosebumps. Faith is trusting the architect when you can't read the plans. Because make no mistake, there are plans. Detailed ones, strategic ones, measured not in months or years, but in maturity. Not in noise, but in necessity. You're not waiting because God forgot you. You're waiting because he's aligning you. For people, for provision, for responsibility, for the version of you that won't waste the thing you're asking for. And when the moment finally arrives, when the silence breaks and the curtain lifts, you won't be surprised. You'll be ready, because he was never ignoring you. He was assembling every detail right on schedule, even if you couldn't see the blueprint yet. Next, let's talk about what he's been assembling not around you, but in you. God isn't punishing you with silence. He's preparing you with structure. Now we need to bring this home, not just to what's being aligned around your life, but what's being built inside of you. Because it's not just the timing that's sacred, it's the transformation. You're not in a holding pattern, you're in a construction zone. And the hardest part to accept, sometimes God keeps the blessing away until the person who can carry it is finally ready. That's not cruelty, that's love with long vision. Because giving you the thing too early, the influence, the platform, the relationship, the wealth, the clarity, before you develop the internal strength to hold it, that wouldn't be a blessing, that would be sabotage. So yes, the silence hurts. Yes, the waiting stretches you. Yes, the unseen seasons feel like abandonment if you don't know the real story. But the truth is, you're not being ignored. You're being shaped. Your patience is being strengthened. Your pride is being stripped. Your faith is being rooted in something deeper than outcome. Your voice is being tuned to a frequency that resonates with real authority, not noise. And when you think nothing is happening, that's usually when everything is happening. But it's happening in the parts of you that aren't visible yet. You know why so many people collapse after they succeed? Because they built results, but they never built resilience. They hustled their way into a breakthrough, but skipped the inner work. They chased influence and ignored integrity. They got the thing and had no foundation to hold it. But that's not going to be your story, because the silence you're in right now isn't an empty hallway. It's a divine workshop. Every unanswered prayer, every detour you didn't understand, every delay that made you question if God still sees you, that was the construction process. And the man or woman you're becoming, they are stronger than the one who prayed for the shortcut. Because when you walk into your next season, with clarity, with strength, with depth, you won't just be grateful it took this long. You'll understand why it had to. Next, let's talk about that exact truth. Why the delay is often God's protection, not punishment. If what you're asking for is sacred, don't be surprised when heaven takes its time. We live in a world that rushes everything. Fast food, fast feedback, fast success. We want answers now, results now, breakthrough now. But God doesn't build on panic. He builds on purpose. And purpose doesn't rush, because here's what no one tells you. The more sacred the assignment, the more protected the process. Some things are too holy to be handed over in a hurry. You've been praying for something real, something deep, something lasting, something powerful. A calling, a platform, a relationship, a breakthrough that matters. But if it's truly sacred, if it's meant to carry weight, if it's meant to impact others and not just impress them, then delay isn't punishment. It's proof that God's protecting it and you. Think about it. A fragile thing can be rushed, but a sacred thing must be shielded. It must be tested, shaped, refined, and that includes you. Because if you're going to carry a sacred assignment, you can't show up half-formed. You can't fumble your way into it with weak roots and borrowed confidence. You need depth. You need scars that taught you wisdom. You need experiences that humbled you. You need patience that outlasts pressure. And that takes time. That takes silence. It takes invisible days. It takes seasons where the only thing being built is your backbone. But that's how God protects the sacred. He keeps it under wraps. He shields it from premature exposure. He places it behind closed doors until you're no longer just wanting the blessing. You're ready to hold it. Because, listen to me carefully, a blessing delivered too soon becomes a burden. Anointing without maturity creates collapse. Favor without character makes you famous and hollow. But that's not what's happening to you. You're not being skipped. You're being preserved. You're not being overlooked. You're being outfitted for something weightier than your current version could carry. And when the day comes, when the silence breaks and the doors open, you'll see it all for what it really was. Protection, preparation, positioning, and in that moment, you won't resent the delay. You'll revere it. Next, let's bring it home, because when the silence breaks, you'll finally understand what all of this was for. God doesn't explain the silence in the middle. He lets the breakthrough do the talking. There will come a moment, not far from now, when the silence breaks, when the prayer you thought was ignored suddenly becomes the door that opens, when the pain that almost made you give up turns into the very place you're most anointed to help others, when the detour that made no sense becomes the foundation that holds your future steady. And in that moment, you'll know why it had to take this long. You'll know why the waiting wasn't wasted. You'll know why the delay wasn't punishment. It was protection with precision, because when God finally moves, he doesn't trickle in with an apology. He floods the room with clarity. He answers not just the prayer you whispered, but the ones you gave up praying. He restores not just what you lost, but the you that got lost trying to survive it. That's why the silence hurt so badly, because deep down you always knew you were meant for more, and heaven wasn't letting you settle. God didn't forget you. He refused to deliver you half-formed. He refused to let you walk into something sacred with an identity still stitched together by people-pleasing and self-doubt. So he waited, patiently, strategically, lovingly. And you thought the silence meant rejection, but it meant refinement. You thought it meant you were disqualified, but it meant you were still in design. You thought it meant you were alone, but it meant the next chapter was being built, or you couldn't see it yet. That's how God works. He doesn't tell you how long it will take. He tells you to keep walking. He doesn't map out the whole journey. He shows you the next step, and trusts that you'll move in faith, not fear. And when the silence finally breaks, when the wind shifts, the clarity comes, and the door you couldn't force finally opens by itself, you won't be surprised. You'll be ready, Because you didn't just survive the silence, you let it build you. And now you walk differently. Now you speak with authority, not anxiety. Now you carry something that wasn't given, it was earned, in the hidden places. That's what the silence was for. And now it's time to make that understanding real. Next, one bold assignment to close this out, and rewire how you see every quiet season from now on. What you call silence, heaven calls setup. But now it's time to rewire how you respond to it. You've heard the truth. You've seen the blueprint behind the silence. Now it's time to act. Because if you don't rewire how you interpret spiritual quiet, you'll keep falling into the same old panic every time heaven pauses. So here's your assignment. Simple, deep, non-negotiable. Step 1, name the silence. Write down every area where God has felt silent lately. Be specific. Don't just say my life or everything. Call it out clearly. I've been praying for clarity about my purpose. I've been asking for breakthrough in my finances. I've been waiting for healing in my marriage. I've been begging for peace in my mind. Put it on paper. Name what feels silent, because clarity is the beginning of transformation. Step 2, interrogate the assumption. Next to each item, write the assumption you've been making in that silence. God doesn't care. I'm not chosen. Or maybe it's too late. Maybe I messed up too much. Maybe he's blessing everyone but me. Now ask yourself, what if that's not the truth? What if something is being assembled, and I just can't see it yet? This is how you reclaim power over the lie, by pulling it into the light and replacing it with aligned faith. Step 3, rewrite the script. For every false assumption, write a new declaration rooted in what you now know. God is not done, he's designing. I am not forgotten, I'm being formed. A delay means depth. The silence is sacred, not personal. If I'm in hiding, it's because something holy is being built in me. Repeat them aloud daily. This is spiritual reprogramming, because heaven doesn't just need your obedience, it needs your agreement. Final declaration. Write this, say it, carry it. I am not abandoned. I am under construction, and the silence I feared is the signal that something sacred is near. You don't have to panic in the quiet anymore. You don't have to interpret delay as denial. You don't have to fill God's silence with your own shame, because now you know. He didn't disappear. He's just been assembling the version of you who can hold what's coming next. And that, my friend, is right on time. Remember, your success begins the moment you decide to act.